Ooh, good evening, everybody.
Hi.
If you think that this is Koleka Putuma on your screen, you are absolutely correct. In the flesh, virtually, yebo, yebo. We're so excited to have tonight's surprise announcement. I'd like to first begin by welcoming a cheeky natives fave, the multi-talented, multi-award winning, like, listen, I'd like to welcome. I don't even, I need a 5 minutes to give Kollega the introduction that she deserves. But I think that Kollega's work and the body of work and the amazing impact that it's had speaks volumes and speaks for itself in ways that I don't think any of us have yet acquired the vocabulary to do so. But I am so excited to welcome you to the Cheeky Natives. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the two of you for hosting me, for doing the most for literature, for Nje. I don't even know what you, I think Cheeky Natures would be the equivalent of the literature mafia, but not like that. Like, I don't know, I'll find the right term, but like, when we think about literature in this country, I think Cheeky Natures is like top of the people that we think about when thinking about authors and literature and making visible all of the books, all of people's words, all of the authors. So thank you for the work that you've done.
Thank you so much, Koleka. I think that, it's an absolutely wonderful privilege to have guests of the Cheekinators come back to us and say, hey guys, I have this thing that I want to do and I want you to do it, right? It really speaks to like how we impact you as a writer and how how the work that we seek to do is really doing what we want it to do, right? We really want it to be a safe place for writers and readers alike, for them to say, hey, Cheekinators, I have this thing going on and I think like you might be the best person and the best fit for this, right? But I think it's also particularly like great to speak to you because one of the very first conversation, our second podcast with a featured author was Koleka Putuma, right? With Collective Amnesia. And for us to come full circle, right? Like to come to this moment, it's like, oh my gosh, like Collective Amnesia still does things to me today. Like I'm still like, you know, you know.
Mhm.
And I think that, so I suppose I wanted to ask you this question, right? You met Sonia Sanchez.
Yes,
First and foremost, you met Sonia Sanchez. So I
I
want you to
did.
tell me all about Sonia Sanchez.
I'm a bit of a weird one. Hey, like if I see someone that I admire, or if I see someone that I like that I fangirl, I will like scurry to the corner and be there and just like watch the person from the distance. But she's like super chill, like in terms of when she's off stage. So this was part of the Princeton Black Poetry Conference that happened last year.
Mom,
But when she
somebody.
performed, listen, when she performed, that whole auditorium was a mess. Okay, because Babes is still out here like yeah, like I don't even know how to explain it, but that was an incredible experience. Not just about Sonia, but I think just that room was like, I remember saying to someone like, literally 80% of this room are the poets that were in my textbook. Like, so that was a trip to be in the same room as the people that you study and to be in the same room as the people that you aspire to accomplish some of the things that they have with literature. So yeah.
And I
I
suppose, yeah,
no,
yes.
you can finish. Finish your chain of thought, Chain. Go for it.
Okay, so no, I think about like a tweet that you tweeted a couple of years ago, right? About you, all your dreams, the courage, right? And how that has really been a culmination of your life, right? So that
Yeah.
has been like a manifestation of you being courageous about your dreams, right? And how is that, right? Like this one tweet is now on a bag, on a t-shirt. It's now yours back, basically. So how is that?
It's it's a number of things. Like if you really, really know me, or the people who are really in my close circle, or people who really know me like in depth, will know that I actually low key live with a lot of fear. Like if it were up to me personally, I would never go for anything. Like my imposter monsters are serious, like I doubt myself at every turn. And so very like early on, I had to kind of fake in the beginning, but kind of try and figure out how to make courage a superpower, so that I can kind of like go for the things and do the things that I want to do, but I'm too scared to do. Um, and it's so weird. I was saying this to someone yesterday that like sometimes, a sermon, like sometimes preachers, when they preach sermons, sometimes the sermon will troll you first before it blesses the congregation, and you owe your dreams, your courage. It trolls me every day. Like every day, I'm like, I do things. I'm like, oh, but you owe your dreams, your courage. You came up with that, so you have to kind of step into it. And to see people kind of also owning the term and sharing it was kind of the thing that also that plus the fact that people are allergic to citation. Yay! Especially citing work by Black women.
Oh my
People
goodness.
on the social media streets are allergic to citing Black women, right? And so what started to happen was that people, okay, I see that you are embracing the word. I see that you are blessed by the word. I see that you want to retweet and reshare the word, but you don't want to attach, you want to erase where the words come from. So I was like, okay, let's figure out ways of combating that, but also taking care of business in the literal sense, but also taking care of business metaphorically. That by insisting on these words being visible and being visible next to your name on totes, on t-shirts, on websites, is that you kind of insist that people attach these words to you and your existence and stop erasing your name from them, which is the thing that was happening a lot with you, all your dreams, your courage. And I was like, no, stop.
I feel like I'm really curious about the business of the arts, right? And we've had a conversation about the way in which you've had to learn about the business of the arts. So we often think of like, I am an artist, I'm great at this, but there is a business that comes with it. And you've had such massive success with Collective Amnesia and No Easter Sunday for Queers. And there's a lot of sort of business that I imagine you've had to learn along the way. So what are some of the things that you've learned? So I love what you're saying about citation, right? Because I find it like it drives me insane. I think you and Upile Chisala are like easily the most plagiarized. Listen, like I stay seeing people just write your things, and I'm like, I know you didn't say that. I know you got
Yeah.
that somewhere. Cite Black women before we drag you, because you will drag you. But I really want to know about how you feel you've grown in understanding the business of the arts.
Oh, that's a loaded one because I feel like I'm only this year started to grasp it fully, or finally in a position where I'm like, I consider myself business savvy. But that's
Mm,
also taken a lot of homework and a lot of work. And it's only this year actually that I registered a company that now owns the work that I do, to hired a manager. Um, but before all of that, had to do, the tiny work of understanding what separates you as an artist, business person from other artists who are just artists, right? And that's like small things that I had to learn, like things that we didn't get at school, like things like quoting versus invoicing, things like um, things like monetizing um, your work and the derivatives of your work, things like quoting your worth, for example, so that there's so many little things that I had to and learn them by failing, learn them by being clapped in the face, like walking into a corporate deal shandies and realizing, oh, I've been exploited, or oh, I've shortchanged myself. Okay, let's correct that the next time. Um, I think, I think the biggest business lesson for me that I've learned over and over and over the years has been, if you do not know it or know about it, consult
Yep.
or ask someone, because there's someone who will know, there's someone who's walked that road. And I think what, particularly in the poetry and theatre industry, I think a lot of the the violences and the exploitations are able to thrive because of the silence, right? Like people don't talk and people don't expose experiences that have happened to them. And I get it that that is hard sometimes, and sometimes you will get blacklisted for things like that. But reaching out and consulting has saved my life and my coins, let me tell you. Yeah.
Get that coin. I just wanna. There's something interesting that she said, and I think it's something that Alicia Harris also spoke about the last time we spoke to her. And I guess I'm interested in
Okay, come through, drop names, Alicia Harris.
Guys, we have a whole live with Koleka Putuma right now on the Facebook of
You mean
September.
Alicia Nicole Harris, that one?
You know her, yeah, you know her, yeah. So I think of what she said about your imposter syndrome and how it often comes out, and something Litoknola and I have been talking about, right? Like how imposter syndrome often comes to rob us, you know. So I listened to a podcast where this black man is talking about how he works until 4 a.m. because, you know, he always feels like there's no room for him to make mistakes, there's no room for rest, there's no room for grace. And Alicia Harris is talking about how radical the notion of rest is for black women, right? So how radical that idea is. But I'm really curious about what rest means to you as somebody who's had massive acclaim with collective amnesia. I mean, we can't even get into how many translations we have because I'm sure now you've lost track, né? Like there have been so many translations, you know. If there's a language, now I'm saying if there's a language you speak, we can get it in that language for you. Okay. Do you speak French? We can get it for you. You know, do you speak French? We got you. But I often think about that you know, when we think about like excellence, black girl magic, chasing all of these things leaves very little room for rest and recuperation. And I want to know what some of your musings are about that, because I'm really interested in rest as a radical act. I'm interested in rest as a radical act of resistance.
Listen here, nothing can be achieved with a burnout. Um, Productivity does not always mean worth, almost never means worth. Um, but I had to learn this lesson the hard way. And I think in many ways, this year with the pandemic and like the forced global pause was the thing that really pushed me to embrace rest, and also embrace pause. Because also I think that when you rest or when you pause and other people are moving, that can cause other anxieties and other feelings of guilt, right? And so I think when everyone shut down, I was kind of like, oh, hang on, for the first time in 3.5 years, I can shut down too. And I think it's only this year that I've become an evangelist for taking naps. I'm like, I schedule my naps in, like a day without a nap, I get very miserable, like I have to nap, I have to have snacks, I have to, yeah. I also just think, like the world takes so much from us, not just as black people, that the world only loves our labor. I read this on someone's Instagram the other day, an African American activist, Brittany, and she was talking about how, like America as Black people, America loves their labor, but not their lives. And I think that the same is true for here, that the world loves us when we are productive, when we are giving, when we are serving, and as soon as, it cannot take from us, so that when we're not giving labor, we're kind of seen as unproductive or lazy or not doing something or not slaying or whatever it is. And so for me, it's become important to rest so that I can do the work later on, because I've experienced the opposite of that, and it was not cute.
So everyone who's joining us, you are joining us from everywhere else in the world. We are on Facebook, we are on we are on YouTube, and we're also on Twitter. And the wonderful thing is that you can also participate in this conversation by from wherever you are. Just put a comment, write it down, and then we will share it with Koleka Putuma. So I'm going to share some comments, and they'll show up on the screen. Kitty on YouTube says, congratulations on your success. Busi is hilarious because Busi said she's so embarrassed. She was waiting on Instagram for the conversation, but we're so glad that you found us on Facebook, Busi. And Busi also says here, I used to feel bad about taking naps in between everything I do, and then I saw Koleka's post about naps. Now I just enjoy them. And so you see, like, it's radical. And then just wanted to quote what you said: "The world only loves our labor." Ooh, man, come on, just another snap for that, right? Melusi on Facebook says, "I needed to hear this," and then Tabo on Facebook says, "Postures of blackness is submissiveness, Koleka." And then here's another comment: "I suffer from not resting and the guilt that comes with resting." Yeah, and I think it's a really
I hope my cousin collects. This is my cousin, and I hope he collects his drag because my cousin works so incredibly hard. I hope that you are collecting your drag, and it's a poetic drag. Collect it, my brother. Collect it.
So yeah, just saying rest as a radical act of resistance. Wow.
Please quote me. Please quote me, Didinke. Please quote me.
So what I want to say is that, as you can see, you can participate in the conversation with us. We are going to have like just a kiki, like, it's really nice. We're going to just talk to Koleka, but definitely we're going to, it's big. What we're going to announce, it is so big. It is so big. It is so big, ne? So we want you to stay tuned. But I mean, this is also like a kiki, just catching up with Koleka, finding out what headspace she's at, and also just to celebrate Koleka, right? Because I think that we often give people their flowers when they're not here. And at the Cheekinators, what we seek to do is give people flowers when they are here. So, Koleka, I mean, let's think about how radical collective amnesia is, right? So, one, you make this really intentional decision to write this book, and you say, I want the printing cost of this book to be as little as possible, because I want the people who I wrote the book for to be the ones to access the book. So I don't want it to be inaccessible. But then something just fantastic happens. Collective amnesia doesn't only belong to us South Africans who can understand references in water and references in mountain. It now belongs to the world because there has been these various translations that have happened. How does that make you feel about the power of poetry, right? Like that your words, collective amnesia, are now being read in a Denmark, for instance, right? And they mean something different to what you intended them to mean.
Yeah, it's so strange. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing that people in different ways can find meaning or can resonate with something through words or words written by someone else. And I think that I spent since the publication of Collective Amnesia, I spent up until, well, obviously COVID happened, traveling, right? And the experience of being in other countries and performing collective amnesia in English, right? That's been a very particular experience, which is an experience that I touch on quite heavily in the second book. Um, but having the book translated into different languages, I think the most interesting process for me was the conversations that I had with the translators, right? And us trying to figure out pronouns in Spanish, pronouns in Danish, pronouns in, whatever else, and trying to figure out, how does the word God translate or Christianity translate in those languages, right? And what it means for like those particular contexts. So for me, it's been more than the fact that now it's seven different speaking language people can read the work. I think it's interesting that people can now start to have conversations about the content of the work, about race, about queerness, about Christianity, religion, in their language, but also how it differs in their language from English. So that's kind of been interesting. And it's also helped me think about language differently and languaging differently in the writing that I do now.
So I see Taka
Speaking about
on
language,
YouTube says, so the second book is coming. Obviously, you know that that is not the announcement because
that ain't the
you said
announcement,
it, it's
boo.
not
That
the
ain't the
announcement.
announcement.
So we all know that a second book is coming. So that is not the announcement.
Okay.
I'm so interested in translations, right? Like I was saying to the Tlohonolo, since I joined a book club. This is like an aside, but not an aside. So I joined a book club, okay, and this is a book club, and the Tlohonolo knows every 2 weeks I go through a lot of things preparing for this book club. Like I go through it all, right? Shout outs to Models to Education, just continuously depriving us of our own languages. But I'm also very interested in translations. I always wonder how those books translate into English, for example. I think that translation is an art. And I want to know if there's been a translation that's surprised you or that stayed with you. So a translation for the word God or the translation for love or whatever that has stayed with you because when you think of that translation, you think of it in English, the nuance has just changed completely.
Um, I think there are translations that have. I think the most consistent thing in most of the translation has been the binary, right? The gender binary and how non-existent it is actually in other languages, but also in some of our languages, like
Yeah.
that binary is not even a thing. And how, whenever we get into conversations with the translators, that is almost always the question, like in Spanish, they don't have a him, her, she, he situation, it because and also the spelling of woman, so which is womb, that has been shifted to kind of demarcate or to erase the man in the woman, is a conversation that we had to do a back and forth about, I think, with about 3 of the translations, because the word for woman in that language doesn't have the word man in it, so there's, or the woman, or the word man is something completely different. So that's been interesting, to kind of see how consistently that comes up. And I think I have to check which one it is, but I also think that there was one translation where um, we had to get specific about the gender of God because God is gendered in that particular language. And I was like, and then they were like, what do you want the meaning to be? Do you want the meaning of God to be a her or a he or just an it? entity thing, and I was like, do I want God to be, you know what, like just make God a her? Like like in the content, like in the meaning of this line, I think it would make sense. So just kind of having to make choices again, um, just over and over having to make choices based on what would make the most sense for that translation has been a fascinating process.
So, I mean, I think that like we can't keep people in holding on to
Suspense.
classes for too
No,
long, right?
let's announce tomorrow. I think actually tomorrow's also a good day. I think tomorrow's a great day for us to announce. What do you
So
think? What do you think? Like, Naksasa ilan?
I feel like people
No,
feel that we need to give the people what they want, right?
yes.
Um,
Tomorrow.
so so what we'll do is like we'll hand it over to Miss Putuma in order to make the announcement. And then we will have a little bit of conversation about this thing that we're all waiting to hear. And then and then we will let you go. So Koleka, it's over to you
Mm-hmm.
to announce the big project.
Okay, give me 1 second because I want to click post here on all the platforms. So your news is officially on all the platforms. So here's the thing. Let me find my way back. So, collective amnesia is officially an audio experience. We now have the audio book version of Collective Amnesia, where I narrate all 51 poems from cover to cover. But it's not
Yes.
only that, like I've made this audio experience in collaboration with a creative company called the Paper Cranes Collaborative, then interdisciplinary company. And the audio experience comes with a string quartet, vocalists, moving images. So it's accompanied by moving images, sound, an original score, which was done by Paper Cranes Collaborative, moving images that have been shot and created especially for the audiobook. So I feel like in many ways, people, by supporting and loving the work in the ways that they did and continue to do, have given this book back to me as a gift. And this is the one consistent thing that people are like, would you ever do an audio? Are you thinking about? So we spent the last couple of weeks grinding and working hard and putting our hearts and everything into it. And now it is finally here. So
Yes. So you heard it here first. Collective Amnesia is now an audio experience read by Koleka Putuma. Yes.
listen.
Yes.
So now
So
it's
I think
like,
a lot of people here. So for instance, Riley on Facebook is like with like emojis, and Busi Sibeko is like yes, I'm here to listen to Koleka all day. And
And now
Busi
you can, boo. And now you can. Full
said,
audio experience.
I said it, and then says, I'm so excited. Poppy from YouTube is like, whoop whoop. And Didintle is like, yes, I remember your reading in PTA, it was awesome. And then Busi is like, yo, Koleka Putuma, show up and show off. So,
yeah, and I,
yeah, that is the
yeah,
big announcement.
yeah, and I'm excited, because like I'll get questions like, "Oh, why don't you read Promised Land?" Like I'll go, when I perform whatever, "Why don't you read Promised Land?" Or "How is No Easter Sunday for Queers read?" Because of how the book is formatted in some of the poems, I often get like these requests to kind of explain how things are done. And the audio experience is not to take away people's experience of how it is that they think the poem should be read, but it's just me kind of inviting people into to experience the worlds of the poems. and how we've kind of shaped them and experienced them. And it is going to be weird being in people's ears, I guess. Like, that's going to be a bit weird, but I'm excited.
So, Dimakato on Facebook says, so excited. I remember both times you came to Grahamstown and you were amazing. So I suppose like people have really been waiting for this, Let Miguel slay chick. So I think people have been really excited. I know that we as the Cheeky Natives are really, really, really excited because it means that we will play it on loop, Uban, on loop.
Yes.
As you are driving, you just like, oh, I just feel with some bit of like some poetry, and then you have an audio experience, right? So I suppose the question then to ask is this: when is the audio book available for everyone to purchase? Not to just listen, to purchase.
So I've clicked everything on my social media. It is ready for pre-sale right now. So people can pre-order their copies, and people who pre-order will get their audiobooks on the 7th, but the audiobook officially comes out on the 8th of October. So in about a week and a half, Collective Amnesia will be in your car, in your stereo, in your playlist. Yeah. So, but it's ready for order right now.
As you heard it here first. Collective Amnesia is one, an audiobook, but two, you can actually pre-order it right now. So if you go to Koleka social media right now, you can order it. And we will also post it on our socials so that you can order the audio book, right? As you heard. So
Pre-order and flourish. Pre-order and flourish. Like,
we said,
why?
on loop, on loop, on loop, Lebo Mashila is here. Says, stunning Koleka, congratulations. This is beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
So as you heard, Collective Amnesia again is an audio experience. I don't want to call it an audio book. I think it's an audio experience because of everything that comes with it, right? And you can pre-order it now. Isn't tomorrow? Next week? Now? Today? And if you pre-order it, you'll hear it first. 37.
Yeah.
37.
Yeah. I really wanted to create an audio book that was, I don't know, something that people could keep going back to. That was just not, because audiobooks there with their chimes and the turning of the pages and the British voice. Shame, I don't knock those audiobooks. They're valid and they have their place, but it was important to kind of create something that I knew that I would want to listen to, that I wanted to see for myself, and experiment with.
And how are you feeling? Like, I mean, I think this is big, right? So now you're going to. This is also a moment of like another collective amnesia in a sense, right? So people have experienced collective amnesia in written form, but people are going to experience collective amnesia in audio form. And are there any anxieties that you have about that process?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to perform poetry and go home, like I rock up at the event, I get on the mic, I do the poem, I go home, right? Like people don't take me home in that sense. They take the book home and they can imagine the poems being read or being done in their own way. But now it's like I'm reading all 51 of the poems, right? And the process of making the work, shout out to Buleng Stewart, who's part of Paper Cranes, is that we went through a 2-week like dramaturgical, I don't know if that's a word, like a text dramaturgy process where we went back into the text like one by one, each of all 51 of them, and going into the feeling. Where were you when you wrote this? What were you feeling? What is this poem about? Who are you speaking to? what feelings do you want these poems to convey? And the music and the sound design also does the same. So there was a lot of homework and work and like cooking that was done with this work, right? And so it's not just me there over the in the booth going, eh, all your traumas kneel and call you savior, right? It was like, what do you mean by that? And so I feel like in a lot of ways, like my heart and soul, I feel like this is the most naked I have ever been. And now also to be naked and vulnerable in people's ears. I'm a bit like, and people can come back to it over and over and over. So in many ways, I feel very vulnerable, but I'm also excited to give this work this kind of a life, and then also now begin to transition into the next book. Like I kind of feel like it's a transition from the one body of work into the next.
And what do you hope that this particular body of work will do? So we've spoken about the amazing work that Collective Amnesia has done in terms of the reach that it's had. But what do you hope for the audio experience? What do you hope that will do?
I guess selfishly, part of it had to do with I'm just I think with Collective Amnesia, I've been so experimental in the last couple of years that I've just wanted to explore every single avenue that words and poetry can go into, every single kind of format that poetry can live in, right? And that's just been a personal interest of mine, like I've done Collective Amnesia in people's living rooms, in auditoriums. I've put it on t-shirts. Like, so I think that this is another kind of format that I really wanted to play in and explore and experiment and see how it is that this work could lend itself to a sonic experience, just for myself, just as an experiment, but also, like just give the people what they want. Like, how much longer must I hear people going, "Are you gonna do an audiobook? Is the audiobook coming?" Like, I just feel like it is here now. It is yours. It is a gift unto you. There we go. But not even in a way of like, "Oh, here you go. Keep quiet now." But just like, I just feel like people who bought the work and continue to buy the work have made the book what it is in terms of its success, and the sales and everything. And yeah, I just wanted to offer this other form of experience back into the world, just as an experiment, as a gift. Yeah.
So, Nosy says, Hallelujah to the furnace and how it did not have my life, saved my life. When I was far from God and even further from myself, Collective Amnesia became the Holy Bible that breathed life into me. And continues to say, knowing that the furnace did not have my life meant maybe possibly it would not. Knowing that the furnace did not have your life meant maybe possibly it would not have mine. I've internalized that message as one of my foundational beliefs, as you signed in my copy of your book, Hallelujah to the Furnace and How It Will Not Have Our Lives.
Sure.
And it says further, I can't wait to interact with your audiobook, Claire. I'm not ready. And I'm touched by that. I don't know how you're feeling.
Yeah,
Like,
that is.
I felt that. I felt that. I felt that.
That's funny because that's also one of the poems I really struggled with when we were recording and making the audio experience. I was like, I do not perform this poem, Promised Land. I do not perform this poem anymore for a reason. It was a particular relationship and a particular time in my life. We do not go back there. And it's funny how going back to certain poems and going back to certain moments when certain poems were written also allowed me to take stock of how far I've come in my own healing, in my own growth as a human being, in my own understanding of things. There are poems in there now that I do not agree with. I'm just like, I would change that, I would change this. Like, like I'm not this person anymore. So it also allowed me to take stock of that, and that was a gift.
Yeah, I see Tato on YouTube says, I hope people will stop stealing our copies of Collective Amnesia now. They have an audiobook now. But I like what you just said now. I speak often to people who write and say, I think Collective Amnesia in many ways is testament of a moment, right, in a time in your life, and it will exist in that moment and in that time. So when you reflect back to it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, no, 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 I won't do that. But that doesn't take away from where you were in your life, because you've grown as a person, right? You're not the same person that you were when you wrote Collective Amnesia. But that's so brilliant that you can sit there and be like, okay, like maybe this was a little bit too much, or this is and that's so important, because I think that for me, I know I returned to Collective Amnesia just to be like, there are moments where I met the book, right, 3 years ago, and where I meet the book now. So some things that I was like, oh yes, I'm like, oh wait, that is much deeper than I thought it was, right? I think about one of the poems that I constantly think about is Graduation, right? And like, and meeting it at every juncture of my life, right? Like before, I used to be this like person who, yeah, we must talk about our feelings, we must do that. But now reading and be like, actually, you know what? These people did not learn to speak this language, right? And now I'm forcing them to enter this language that I'm speaking, but I'm not meeting them where they are. So I think for me, Collective Amnesia does that. Like it meets me at different moments. And I think that's what the audiobook is going to do as well. Like meet me at different moments. But also hearing your voice 24/7.
I love what Koleka said about this being also a transition to an end of a point. So I think of, or to a transition to the next part, but also in many ways like a closure of a certain part as well. So I think of it's bad because I keep thinking of Amnesia today, but she there's a poem where she talks about how she'd written that girl, right? And like 7 years later, people were still expecting her to be that girl.
Yeah.
And I love what she said about also the idea that there are poems that she no longer wants to perform because they represent the place in your life that you no longer want to go to. And I think that is so beautiful for an artist to be able to draw those kind of boundaries. Right? I think that people often feel like because I have access to the art, I have access to you, I have access to you performing the art. And it's such an important boundary, particularly for Black people, to be able to draw those kinds of boundaries, right? Even for the audience to say, this is the work is out, you may consume the work in whatever way makes sense to you, but I may not always be able to deliver the work that you want, right? So there are poems that I will not do. There are poems I may not ever want to perform again. And that takes nothing away from the work, but it's also just this thing about building the kind of culture that respects our artists like that.
Yeah. And also that in this format, you also kind of invite people to consume the work in ways where they can also demarcate boundaries for themselves, right? Like there's certain poems in Collective Amnesia that I do not perform just because I feel like, okay, I get on stage, I do these poems, and then I leave the audience with this feeling, and then what? And also like some of these poems, I haven't even worked through them myself. So then what is the objective here? But with the audiobook, it's an invitation to kind of go, I can stop this poem at any moment. Actually, I can just pause and come back to this poem. Actually, I can skip this poem, or I can circle back to it. And so it allows for people to listen to the work in ways that make sense for them, but also in ways that do not overwhelm them in any way. But also takes the pressure off of me to do that other kind of dance or that performance of like saying no to performing certain poems, right? Because like, how much longer? Water. Like, goodness, like now people are gonna be like, water. I'll be like, there's an audiobook. Water's in the audiobook. And also it's 280 rand. Thanks, like just, just also for myself to be also to give myself the space and the freedom to move on because I'm also in the middle of writing another book and birthing something else. And so I think it's not necessarily a full stop, it's a comma, because collective amnesia will continue to do what it does in the world and have its translations and have its own life, and people will embrace it and do with it what they want. But for myself to mark the journey as a comma, I feel like this is the project for me where I go, okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to share this comment by Lebo Mashile. Lebo says, Koleka is a creative powerhouse, even in her artistic infancy. The first time I saw her years ago, when she won the Word and Sound Slam Championship in Grahamstown, it was clear that she was an innovator. Watching her journey unfold is invigorating. She keeps reimagining herself, and she gives everyone who loves her work permission to do the same.
What does happen when Lebu Mashile says things like this about you? Tell me what the appropriate response is.
People must pre-order the audiobook.
That's really what happened.
Our whole creative powerhouse.
I wonder though, Koleka, if you want to read us a poem from Collective Amnesia, just as like a starting point, just so that people can enter, if only if you're comfortable with reading from Collective Amnesia, just as a parting shot to this announcement.
I wonder.
You can read in your translations.
Where? The same translation that actually, let me not bring that conversation here. It's the way the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture said that I was going to read in Swedish. I was like, where? How? Give me 1 second.
Sorry, Dr. Slay, I just want to say you look very beautiful today. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
I think maybe I'll read a poem that surprised me, that I forgot even existed here. Because that happened a lot, like we'd have working sessions and I'd be like, oh, there's a poem like that here. And that happened a lot with the second chapter, because I feel like it's the most neglected chapter that it's a chapter that I do not read from. I'm going to read this. Okay. It's the first poem of chapter 2. Inland. It takes strength to grieve, to fall apart, leaking things, people who will never return to you. And yet, we are taught that mourning is the opposite of strength. How many of us have seen our mothers weep? The kind of weeping that has you drenched at the seams, drowning in salt water, arms flailing for help. The kind you bargain with to let you go alive.
Yeah. First of all, wow. Wait, poem here, honey.
If I
Yeah.
had a shoe, friend, if I had a shoe, I would just throw it at the screen.
Typo. A whole shoe.
But I
In like the best literary tradition ever, like I'm gonna just throw the shoe so you know it's Lalela. This poem is all.
Yeah. Like we can be as creators or as artists or as people who make things and share things with other people, right? Like imposter monsters get in the way sometimes, and we can get so critical of the work that we make that sometimes you forget that sometimes the work that you make or the work that you create, when you come back to it, you're like, yo, Gandhi, I wrote this for me, like critical voice aside, like actually these poems showed up to undo me, to heal me, to make me realize things about myself that I didn't even know were there, and I guess like that's the power of poetry and writing, is that you dig up parts of yourself that you can keep coming back to and realizing over and over.
I mean, you have Tato from YouTube saying, "Buried memory really helped me process the grieving my mom. Thank you for giving us the words." And I think I'm so grateful for the affirmations that people have been giving tonight. I think that it's really important to give people flowers while they're still alive, right? Another person says, "Thank you for your words of healing." What? You are the source. You are the source. You are the source. The source.
Of the sauce.
The source of the source.
The sauce of the sauce.
The depth here, guys.
I thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This has absolutely been fantastic. Again, as we've said, Koleka Putuma has recorded and is releasing the audio book or the audio experience of Collective Amnesia. And the audio experience is available right now for pre-order. You will be the people who, when you pre-order, you will be able to put it on the 7th. Otherwise, it will be live on the 8th of October. So in a week, like literally in a week, we will be jamming to Collective Amnesia, right?
And it's available on kolegaputuma.com/shop. And while you're there, you can get yourself the t-shirts while you're listening to the audio experience. Get yourself the t-shirts. Get yourself a tote bag to carry your actual physical copy of Collective Amnesia. But I think,
I started a relief fund for Black queer poets and theatre practitioners. So if you do visit the website or you do visit the shop, yes, get the audiobook experience, but also, maybe take the time to spread awareness about the fund, because that's also really close to my heart. So
yeah.
I mean, also, if you want to get both of Koleka Putuma's books, Collective Amnesia and No Easter Sunday for Queers, you can get signed copies from the Cheeky Merchant. So you just go to www.cheekynatives.co.za/shop, and then you click there, and then we will deliver to your home both these books signed by Koleka Putuma. But again, please, buy it, ne? Buy it. We cannot emphasize this enough. Buy it. Let's make sure by the time that this audio book is out, at least we are already there. I don't know how it works with audiobooks and number one and whatnot. I don't know how that works.
It's already number one. We're speaking it into existence.
I'm just
number one.
Let's give the money. Because if you give the money, the relief fund will get some money. And the relief fund, when it gets some money, the people will get some money, you see. So we're all in the process of giving, right? Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to the people who've joined us on Facebook. Thank you for the people who've joined us on YouTube. And thank you for the people who are joining us on Twitter. Again, if you aren't following our social media networks or subscribing, please do so. If you are not following Koleka Putuma, please follow Koleka Putuma all across networks. We'll probably do an announcement tomorrow on our website just linking you back to Koleka's website for you to order. You must order the book.
You must
Any
order,
last
please.
word from
You must
you,
order.
Koleka?
Am I allowed to say thank you to the two of you?
I'm sure. Please,
Fabulous
we like
human
thank you and money.
beings, game changers, innovators,
Yeah.
go before this. Hey, thank you for hosting me tonight, and thank you for making room and space,
Mm.
and also just for always championing writing and literature. You know, yeah.
Oh, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Koleka. It's been absolutely beautiful to just watch the work that Collective Amnesia has done, continues to do, and will be doing in the future as well. I have no doubt that sometime in the distant future there will be a little black child who comes across collective amnesia and sees themselves in poetry in a way that many of us were unable to see ourselves until we were adults. And that's just testament to the kind of amazing work that collective amnesia does. So thank you so much. We're so excited for the next parts of your journey. We are so excited to see what comes next. We're absolutely speaking number one in multiple countries. For this audio experience, we know that it's been a labor of love, and we know that it is going to just broaden the work that Collective Amnesia has done. And so thank you so much for the amazing work that you do. And I really want to encourage everybody to please definitely pre-order the audio experience, but to also really please support the Black Girl Live the Relief Fund that Koleka Putuma has on her website. Please, it's amazing work that she's doing, that she continues to do.
Thank
All
you.
right, everyone. Thank you so much. And until next time, bye.